Right, here is a short video of dismantling a Hostmaster 2 soda siphon, which has just come in. Now, this one's in not terribly good condition. As you can see, pretty old, but I'm sure it's going to be functional. So we've got here, we'll take off the head. Yeah, I got the neck sleeve in there. Side. We'll leave that for the moment. This is the head, dip tube, old seal in there. Well, that's not unusual. See, it's really very badly cracked and the tube is loose. So what we'll do is we'll put that to one side because that's scrap, and we would replace that with a new one. So there it is, there's a new one, and that just goes in there like that. So we've got the new one in here, and that'll be fine. So now we'll dismantle the head. So what you've got here is the feature into which the CO2 cartridge goes, and that's really heavily covered in limescale and whatnot. Probably not really see that. So what you do is you get like this, which is a thin, it's actually in this case it's a key ring, but you can use a coin or something similar that's quite narrow. It just needs to fit into a slot here, and we need to twist that anti-clockwise. So you probably heard it there, click. That's it, just breaking away from all these limescale stains. There we go. Unscrew it, and that all comes out. You can probably see there. And there we have the assembly. Right, so that's the piercing pin assembly itself, and then there's the threaded section, and underneath there's usually, or should be, a O-ring which sits into a groove in the head in there and helps it seal. And that one's, it should be round in section, this one's square, so that's totally wrecked. And there's the threaded part. That just needs cleaning. No further really work needs to be done on that. Here is the piercing pin assembly. And I think we can already see here, for some reason, there's a hair stuck in it. I don't know how that managed to get there, but that could well have been the reason why this has been leaking. And you can also see here, let's do it there, there's a sleeve covered in rather a lot of brown deposits, and a clip, and that just helps to prevent the seal from being blown out. So what we find is frequently, in this case, this sleeve seal has got a tear in it, something like that. So just lift it off like that, and then we get, in this case, a sharp knife, and just cut it, because this is rubbish now, because it's failed. And what you can also see under there, see that black piece of goo there against the rubber? That's what was probably causing it to leak. bits of rubbish like that get blown down through the piercing pin, and sometimes they can be bits of metal from the front diaphragm on the carbon dioxide capsule. Other times they can be bits of the O-ring in there when it starts to degrade, or they can be limescale. Frequently it's just some limescale, and what happens is, you can probably see it in there. Well, let's just take that clip off so you can see in there better. It's not really needed, that clip anyway, but what you can see just in there is a hole. So debris gets blown down through there, or limescale gets deposited inside here when it's or oxides, rust gets in there, and then when you put the carbon dioxide capsule in, it gets blown down there, gets blown out through the hole, gets stuck underneath the surface of this seal, lifting it away from the metal of this. And what happens is then water just creeps back underneath the seal through the tiny gap and into that hole, and then back out through the centre of the piercing pin. And for example, if it had been that piece of hair that we saw earlier, what happens is you just get a very, very tiny little leak, and it just weeps out of here, a drop at a time, slowly, 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 and that's the only thing. And for most people that can be tolerable, but if it's a large piece, as this one, which I think you could see on that sleeve, that's enough to actually lift this away quite a lot, and you get quite an extensive leak out through here. And I think that's the reason why you can see all the brown rusty deposit on here, mixture of limescale and water, because this has been leaking extensively for quite a while. Now what we do to recycle or recondition that is carefully clean that in an ultrasonic cleaning bath, wire brushing, bit of light abrasives on there, and the most important thing is to ensure that this part here is as clean as possible, because when we replace this old one with a new one, got some in here, what we've got is some ones that have been made for us. There you go, and those go in there. So that just slides on. It would slide on after we've sealed it, just like this. There we go. And that would replace the seal if it had been split or cracked, etc., or dirty. And that's essentially it. Usually you don't need to replace this clip on the end. That's fine. Amongst other things we'd also replace is we'd clean out inside here to remove all the deposits. And there's no ring in here of a rather special size, and the size is quite important. A lot of the information on the internet is it will just about fit and work, but it's not reliable. The original O-ring is of a different size to that commonly found in bulletins on the internet, and if you have the incorrect size, what happens is the O-ring seal in there, if it's too big, when you push the carbon dioxide capsule in, basically it cuts bits of the O-ring seal off, and then they get blown down through the pin and end up under here. So after a few uses it starts leaking. Also the O-ring seal, if it's the wrong size, because it gets shredded or it doesn't seal, then after a few uses it will fail itself. So we have spent a while ensuring that the O-ring seal in there is the correct one for the piece, and all should work. Now, what we would normally do after we'd remove this is we'd clean all of these threads mechanically and then ultrasonically clean everything up, give it a light polish, and then it's ready for reuse. We wouldn't put this new tubular seal, sleeve seal back on because at that stage, because it's still dirty. So you can see there, that's quite dirty. It should be a little bit more shiny than that. Anyway, that's enough on that. The rest of the head is relatively easy to dismantle. Unscrew the screw here, take the handle out, you can see there, just unscrew that. Sometimes they're a little bit seized in place, so you need to put a pair of pliers on there. Find inside that there's a spring, and then there's the seal in here, and those are, sometimes you can just push them out like this one, and what you'll find is like a little plunger with an O-ring seal in there, and that prevents water from getting past this tip seal, getting past out of the head, directs it down the nozzle by holding it, stopping it flowing up the barrel of the thing towards the cap. And what you can see here, and this is pretty common, is that there's a nose seal, and that's heavily impressed after 40 years. Frequently they're cracked or they're soft. This one is also, because it's spread out over the time, it's actually cracked away the plastic, and this is not really being held in place anymore, so I'm surprised it actually worked. That needs to be totally replaced. So what we have is we have some remanufactured plastic ones here. These ones are ready for use, and you can see that they look pretty much identical to the ones that are originally in there, and those have a new rubber seal in the end, and those just go back in. So we sell those, and we also just sell reconditioned original ones too, like that, and they're usually just a bit discoloured, but they're fine because none of the plastic is broken away. So what the next steps will be is to go through the reverse of that. Clean everything, give it a bit of a polish, chrome, etc. plastic, using cleaning materials, and then put everything back in having been cleaned. That would go in like this. We'd replace everything, put a new O-ring in, I won't do it here, and then just reassemble it and then tighten it up using something like that, and then put a new replacement one of these in there. That'll go in there with a nose seal, etc. That should be a sliding fit. Should be some food grade or water-approved silicone grease goes on that to give it some good lubrication, so it's nice smooth sliding fit, and then everything goes back together again. So that, in a nutshell, is how we reconditioned. So, interrupted a little bit. So here we have the original soda siphon, and after reconditioning, what you get is like this. Everything's been cleaned up, new O-ring in there, reassembled with a new or reconditioned plunger in there, greased with a probably water service approved lubricant, in there so it's a nice smooth action. And then we get a new dip tube, neck seal, that goes in there, head pushed down, make sure it's aligned properly with the threads. Of course, if we were doing this properly, we would have refilled it with water to the right level. And the next, there's a neck sleeve in there which stops you filling it up much above there. Otherwise, if you think that's not working, you can put in about 900 to 950, 2 imperial pints of water, and then it's okay. But I'd advise you to get a replacement neck sleeve from us because it saves errors. You can't just fill it right up to the top with water, otherwise the safety feature will come in and it will just spurt water and gas out there when you try and fill it up. Okay, that's the end of this video. This video was brought to you by AcquaSpumante. That's your source of sparkling water. Thank you.